Every woman has a story, a journey to discovering who she is and finding her truth in the world. This is where women come together to find connection through sharing those stories and to help each of us answer the question, who am I? Without labels, without judgment, and without anybody else's expectations. Welcome to the Story of Her. What's your story? Welcome, Angie Staley, to the Story of Her podcast. I want to preface
Thank
this
you.
conversation with the fact that I sent you a request for your bio, and you sent me your beautiful bio and then immediately apologized for it. Can you tell me why you apologized for your bio?
Yes, I can. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Alicia. It's an honor to be here, and I value what you're doing. It's important and it has impact, and women need this. So thank you. So as far as my bio, yeah, I felt a little sheepish, not gonna lie, because I was told when I created that bio just to not try to be humble, just to get it all out there. Somebody had said this for some classes that I was teaching for film, and they were like, "Don't hold back, say all the things," because as women, that's what we do. We hold back, and I still want to hold back right now. But anyway, so I said, okay, I'm just gonna do it. So I did it. And then when you asked for my bio, I thought, oh man, I don't really have time to like revamp this. This is the best I have right now. So I'm just gonna send it over and tell her, hey, take out all the things that are too much, you know? So just the idea of being too much was kind of a little interesting.
Yeah, it struck me so strongly that I wanted to have you on the show to talk about womanhood and who we are and our identity. And immediately you're like trying to make yourself less to make other people feel comfortable. And
Mm.
I'm like, that is the whole point. We should not have to make ourselves less. And you've
Hmm.
accomplished all these wonderful things, and you deserve to feel joy for those things that you've done and not feel like, well, I have to dumb down who I am for other people, right?
Wow.
Why do
Thank
you
you.
think we feel that way?
I feel like there's so many layers to it for me personally. One might be as a woman with other women. I sometimes feel like I don't want them to think I'm bragging.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have nothing to brag about. I don't mean that, but I don't want to seem like I am all, hey, look at all the things I'm doing. Look at me, because I'm very overly sensitive to people's feelings to a fault,
Hmm.
to where it is my blessing and my curse in life, where sometimes I just think, oh gosh, I don't want them to feel a certain way or to think that I'm trying to show off. And then there's the other layer where I'm an actress. And there are reputations for some actors to be very full of themselves. And I definitely never, like, I'm not, number one, I'm not full of myself, but also I don't ever want to come across as if I am. Or I feel a responsibility to be a place of everybody's welcome. That is
Hmm.
just like who I want to be and who I try to be. And so I always try to not make myself seem like I am above anybody else, I guess, if that makes sense.
I don't think anybody who's ever met you has felt like you were above anybody else. But we can't see that about ourselves, right? It is partly our nature to be concerned with other people's feelings. It's probably what makes us good moms, right?
Right. Good point. Wow. Yeah.
But we're mothering everybody that we know and don't know and might know all the time.
100%. That is it again. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. But that feeling responsible for other people's feelings is not necessarily healthy.
Hmm.
There's got to be a balance somewhere, and I haven't found it yet. I don't know. Have you found any balance in that?
I have not. I really haven't. I feel like I often want to see and okay, this is me already trying to edit what I want to say, right? Like already trying
Hmm.
to change what I want to say. I'll just let it out. Basically, I feel more inclined to want to find other people's gifts and accomplishments and talents and kind of act as a mirror to show it to them than to have that mirror up to myself. And so that balance is something I'm striving for, but I like this piece of myself, but I realize there are pieces of it that are not healthy. It's like trying to find that little balance, that magical balance that we'll never find.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to showcase other people's gifts and to see them as amazing. I think the problem comes in when we aren't able to see that about ourselves. Maybe we need a two-way mirror. We can see the
Ooh,
good things about them, but also see ourselves.
I feel like that's a good episode title right there, Two-Way Mirror.
I love it. So,
Certainly.
Angie, because I know you, I realized we've jumped straight to this conversation without really, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself right now in your life?
Great. Okay, thank you. So I am a mom. I've been married for 21 years. I have three boys. That is a party at all times. And I am a writer, both screenplay and play writer and musicals. I am an actress, a director, a instructor for film and also commercial acting. As far as directing, I'm for film and also theater. I'm a choreographer, a dance fitness instructor for my church. The church that I belong to is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I probably can't get through this interview without mentioning that because it's such a huge piece of my identity. But in our church, we have volunteer callings that we are asked to do. So we can, of course, say no, but we can say yes. And people basically ask us and give us an assignment and say, are you willing to do this? And it's for a period of time. So my current calling is the state communication director, and that takes a whole lot of time of my life. But I absolutely love it. And is very much focused on building bridges with different groups of people, whether that be interfaith, whether that be government relations, nonprofits, just different races and ethnicities. I'm very focused on finding ways that we can find common ground and creating friendships and relationships. So I would say those are kind of the things I'm doing right now.
That's a lot of things.
I don't know if I'm actively doing all the things, but
Yeah,
that's
you
kind
are.
of who I
Well,
am.
and I noticed, like, I see your social media presence, and I'm seeing a lot of that outreach that you're doing with church, and it is beautiful. And I think it is that no matter what religion you belong to, I think that finding the commonality between groups and communities is just so vital, and we don't do enough of that. There's so much division. I'm this, you're that. I believe this, you believe that. Instead, it's like, what if we all just focused on what makes us similar and where we can find joy together?
Thank
Um,
you.
yes, you are a playwright and have written this beautiful musical, Finding Patience. It has a beautiful message. Can you talk a little bit about that message? Because I feel like some of who you are has been shaped by that story.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a huge part of my life. So it's called Finding Patience, and it's the story of Holly Springs. And we started it in 2017, the first production of it, and we were really grateful to have sold out performances. I think we had like 10 or something at that time. And it was basically about the history of the town of Holly Springs, North Carolina. And the reason why is because I moved to Holly Springs from, the West Coast. And when I came, I just felt like there was a story that hadn't been told. There were so many people from other places that had never, who didn't know the history of the town. And I felt like people lived here before, they contributed to this town. We are here because of the sacrifices that they made. So I want to understand like who came before. And especially, I was focused on those who were enslaved in Holly Springs. And that has always held a special place in my heart because I feel like talking about hard history is important. Um, no matter what anybody might say, I feel like it's incredibly important to face those things and to validate experiences and to help make sure that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. So I spent several years researching and trying to understand. And so basically the play, which is now a musical, we turned it into a musical during the pandemic. It is about a woman named Patience who was formerly enslaved, and in the play she's now free. And it takes place in a cemetery. The entire stage is a cemetery, and there's a dilapidated house in the back, and it's, from the 1800s. And that actually is the house that she lived in and that she was enslaved in. And we see basically, like I said, it's a cemetery. And Patience tells the story of Holly Springs, and she's actually dead. So we kind of go back into her life and we see her alive having conversations with people. We see her struggles, then we see her, talking directly to the audience and breaking that fourth wall. And so she leads us through the history of Holly Springs. And at the very end of the play, I feel like it's pretty powerful. I don't even feel like I wrote it. I feel like it just came, so I feel like
Hmm.
almost like I can't take credit again. There I am again, but I truly do kind of feel like that because I did pray a lot as I wrote it. But the whole entire thing is about people being able to move on. So Patience's role is almost like a greeter in the cemetery. People will die and they'll come showing up to their own funeral and nobody sees them except for her. And she greets them, helps them kind of process the fact that they're dead. And they kind of talk about some of the issues that they're having to work through after having just passed away. She helps them process all of those things. And then they see a light and they move forward. And so she's like that kind of greeter. And no light comes for her. Like she's just wondering, why am I still here? Why is this light not coming for me? And at the end, we get to see how that changes because a descendant of hers finds her. So, I mean, in one way, it's also very female oriented with all of that. And it's pretty powerful to see this connection that this female has has with her descendant, what happens after that. But yeah, so that's basically what it's about. And it's about family history, it's about our ancestors, but so much of it is about experiences that people have had that I interviewed over years about their experiences racially and what
Mhm.
they have been through, what their ancestors have been through, just about the town in general. So it really takes place from like 1865 until the present day. So we did it again in 2022, and we're really grateful to have another 14 sold out performances. We made a music video for it, and it's just been a highlight in my life to be able to be part of it and to see how people can come together, how we can talk about hard things in a way that unites us instead of a way that divides us. There's something really special about understanding where we live.
Mhm.
Once we understand like the history of it, we feel this deep connection to it and it becomes part of our identity too. So that has been a huge part of my life. So local history in general is a passion of mine. I'm that person at every museum who people are like, come on, looking at their watches, feeling their pulse to see if they're still alive, because I'm still reading another sign because I have to read every single thing at every museum. I'm the person who stops at all like the little cemeteries on the side of the road or the street markers because I just find it fascinating.
One thing that's really interesting about finding patience is that you see it as, and it is, this beautiful story of this town in North Carolina, but it's a microcosm of small town America all across the United States and what was happening in history throughout that. Yes, it's about Holly Springs, but it's also about everywhere and about all of us. And so it's a beautiful story. Angie, let's go back in time for you to your
Yes.
childhood and tell us a little bit about your childhood and how you feel like that childhood helped shape your identity.
Okay, great. So I'm the youngest of five kids, and my family had a rough time. We really did. And there was a lot of divorce, a lot of boyfriends in and out, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of good things too. I love my family so much. I'm not saying this to be like, oh, anything anyone does is wrong, that's wrong, I'm okay with. It's not that. I genuinely feel complete peace and love concerning the things that happened in the past. Part of that is that I have a really bad memory, and so I've forgotten some of those things. So, but the other piece is that I don't have any ill will when I talk about this stuff. I really don't. But definitely a difficult childhood. We struggled financially a lot, lived in a, temporary homeless shelter a couple of times. Weren't sure what we were going to do often. My mom was a single mom for a long time and she had to survive. And so she had to make choices that weren't always the best in order to survive. But she did it because she loved us and she was a survivor. And both my parents have passed away now. But yeah, then I met my my real dad again. Like he left when I was little. I met him again when I was like in my 20s. And that was kind of a shock to my system. It was like a Jerry Springer show. It was crazy. But I mean, not really, but but yeah, so that's kind of my childhood. But I feel like since I was little, I always, as a youngest, I definitely was trying to find my place. And there was a little old cassette tape where I had a little speech impediment and I said, I'm going to be a star, like talking about how I want to be a star. And that's kind of been a funny theme with my family. And that sort of has been what I've been drawn to is ways to have an outlet to express myself and to help express other points of view through different characters. But I think probably, for my first several years of life, it was a lot of insecurity and a lot of lack of stability. And then I ended up actually moving in with my sister's dad when I was just gotten through eighth grade. So I moved from Oregon to Washington, which was like a huge change, left my mom and everything there and moved in with somebody I hardly even knew who's suddenly my
Wow.
dad. And it was I've named one of my kids after him since then. So he's been such a great blessing in my life. But it was a huge change and there was just so much uncertainty. Well, there came a point where I just kind of always knew I was a little different. I always kind of knew I didn't see things the same as a lot of people. And for a while, I tried so hard to, and I tried so hard to fit in for a while, right? And I tried to fit with certain groups, but probably my sophomore year of high school, something clicked. And it was like, you know what? You are different, and that is your superpower. Like it kind of was like this moment, and I don't know if you ever remember that poster what does it say? Be your own kind of beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this? And it
Yes.
has a bunch of roses, and there's like one daisy, I think, something like that. And you kind of think, oh, roses, roses are the best. And then you see this, like all these roses, it sounds great. But then when you see this one little daisy, it kind of just brings you joy. And being different is okay. So in my sophomore year of high school, I think I sort of started to embrace that and realized this is who I am. And actually, it's kind of cool to not be like everybody else. And I wasn't trying to be different. You know how sometimes those people like try to be
Mm-hmm.
different. But I just genuinely was like, here's what I like. Here's what I like to do. I loved acting. I started acting when I was like in third grade. And I, became the drama club president in high school. My best friend and I both tried out for the cheerleading squad. She made it and I did not. And that was a really huge like crossroads in my life because had that not happened, like the course of my life would have totally changed. So she became captain of the cheerleading squad and I became president of the drama club. And here at lunch, you could imagine like the group of people that sat together because we we decided we were like everybody fits. Everybody belongs, everybody can sit with us. So you got the people with the mohawk, and then you got the cheerleader, next to him. It was actually an incredible experience. And I mean, that was life-changing for me. But I just embraced those pieces of myself and decided it was okay to be who I am.
It's so beautiful to see that who you are now, reaching out to all different communities and pulling them together to find common ground. You can take that all the way back to high school, and that this experience that you had there has shaped who you are now in a beautiful way. Do you feel like as you were growing up, it sounds like that pretty young, you recognized big core parts of your identity, that you didn't need to be like everybody else, that you wanted to be on a stage, and that you found joy performing and you found joy in bringing people together. Do you ever feel like there were certain expectations placed on you as a child besides the things that you placed on yourself, that you would be a certain way or do certain things?
Hmm. I think I saw myself as wanting to. Wow, this is a good psychological conversation because things are coming to my mind. I think I might have seen myself as having the role to lighten the load and to help my family be happy
Hmm.
when we were struggling. I think I sort of had that expectation for myself that I could help, that was one thing I could do to help with everything that people went through was to help people feel better somehow. Does that answer your question? I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
I mean, and it makes sense with what you do now, right? And even our conversation at the beginning about making yourself less to make other people feel more comfortable and better. And it's not a bad thing, right? To want to lighten others' loads. We just have to balance it with taking care of ourselves. As you've grown up, do you feel like there have ever been times where you lost yourself in labels or titles?
that is such a good question because I thought a lot about this and actually I feel like I've given myself my own labels and my own titles. And my favorite book of all time is called Present Over Perfect by Shauna Nyquist. Have you read that?
I haven't, but now I want to.
Okay, I think you'll love it. But you have to listen to the audiobook because I love her voice and I know you'll appreciate that. So, anyway, she has a great speaking voice and she talks about how she very much from an early age wanted people to see her as responsible and reliable. That she felt like those were her tickets to life. Like those were her talents, those were the things that could get her into any room, that she could do that. And she wanted people to see her being so incredibly capable that it ended up being kind of our downfall, right? Like our biggest gift is also our greatest curse at times. So I think I've put labels on myself. I've wanted to be that person that will be the yes person and that
Mhm.
will say yes to things and will do the things that need to get done and will be responsible and reliable and creative. And I have created this without meaning to this set of labels that I wanted to be seen as that I feel like ends up being unmanageable
Mhm.
really quickly. And what's funny about that is I have this whole theory that I feel like in your 20s, you're trying so hard just to get all the education you can, have all the opportunities you can. It's like, pick me, everybody. Like, here I am. I can do stuff, right? Like, we're just like going around our life, like, I promise you, I can do that. I can learn that. And I feel
Proving
like in our
ourselves.
30s, what was proving ourselves? Yes, we're getting that education, we're getting those experiences. We very much want to be trusted, we want to be seen a certain way. And then in our 30s, we're doing all those things. We are like, people are saying, yes, we do actually want you. And so you're having all of those real, like more in-depth experiences, and all of those opportunities are just flying at you like crazy. And then in your 40s, you're basically saying no.
Yeah.
Saying, thank you. I appreciate that, but I'm going to have to set some boundaries and I'm going to have to say no because there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so much of me. And so I feel like right now I'm in my 40s. I'm in that stage of how do I say yes to the things that I feel like are priorities for me and that are the most important things. And it's hard for me to reconcile that with the labels that I've wanted people to have for me. So I've wanted to be that person that they could talk to about all these things and that they could ask and that they could collaborate with. Yesterday I just had lunch with some amazing, gifted people, and they gave me such a kind offer for something. And that's the label that I've had out there, right? And inside, I'm like, there's just no way. I don't have the time for this. I don't have the bandwidth for this. And it's not my priority right now. And this is a hard thing. So I think I've kind of hit that a lot. But yeah, labels, I don't feel like I've necessarily like ever been labeled a certain way that I didn't feel like I could break.
Mhm.
Sounds weird to say that. I've never felt controlled by labels that other people have for me. I felt that there's always a way around those or to help them see who I really am. But I feel like I've sort of chained myself with my own labels.
That is really insightful, and I wonder how many of us do the same thing. And maybe sometimes we're putting labels on ourselves, but we're blaming it on other people. Because
Ooh.
it's easier to say, well, the world says that I have to be blah, 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 blah. But really, it's an expectation we've placed on ourselves. I
Mhm.
wonder if there was a message we could give to those women in their 20s who are saying, please, 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 me. Like, is it possible for them to come at it from the knowledge that we have in our 40s of going, whoa, slow down. Who am I? Like, I need to breathe a little bit and I need to focus on what's important.
I feel like it is a process that we all have to go through, but I think being aware that that's coming later
Hmm.
and allowing that for yourself is helpful. Just to know that, yes, this is your time for that because you're going to want that. That's what you want at that time. Look at me, I can do this. And that's great. I think that's part of our development. But I think as long as we know there will be a time where we're going to have to say no and we're going to have to whittle things down and just be prepared that that's coming and be okay with that and let people know that I might not always be available, but I think also everybody's bandwidth is just different, right? What everybody has the capacity for is different. Not to say one is good and one is bad at all. Honestly,
Right.
I have so much respect for my friends who don't do that much. That sounds terrible to say, but sometimes I'll have friends where I'm like, they keep their life very tight. Nope.
Hmm.
That's one. I have one thing scheduled that day. I can't do anything else. And I'm like, what does that look like?
No.
Teach me how you do that,
Love the analogy of we have so many spoons in a day. Like, and I don't know who came up with that originally, so I can't credit that. Like, I've heard this said so many times, like, I have so many spoons in a day and I can only dip so much out, like spoonfuls of me to give or whatever. And I truly believe that some people just have more spoons to give per day than other people and that it varies. We can't compare ourselves. My sister is a great example because we were raised pretty much exactly the same, but we have different amount of spoons to give to different things. There are things that she does that I'm like, holy cow, how does she have the energy and the time to do that? And then she says the same thing about me. And she's like, how in the world do you have the time and energy to do that? And it's like, well, but you're doing that, but it's that we just can't judge our own experience by anybody else's. We really
Oh,
can't.
well said. Well said. We really can't compare those journeys. And I think there's also this extra dynamic with extroverts.
Mhm.
I feel like, and this is another reason why the book Present Over Perfect is so important, is the author is an extrovert, and she just talks about how she had to learn how to say no to things. But I think she calls herself like the last extrovert on the dance floor. Like she feels like she's always like, let's do this, and everything sounds fun to her. She says
Mhm.
yes because she actually wants to. It's not necessarily she's trying to please everybody, but she also wants to do it. And so I feel like she talks about her journey, and I've literally listened to that book probably 20 times. And I am not the kind of person who listens to things over and over or watches the same movie more than once. I actually hate that. So for me to listen to it so many times, yes, I'm like, I need what she's saying because it resonates in my soul. And she says that, a lot of her introvert friends will look at her and they'll be like, why don't you just not do that? Why don't you just like limit the amount of things you're doing? Or why don't you just say no? And they just look at her kind of like, why don't you have control of your life? And it's because it's just a different personality. They don't really truly understand where she's coming from. But as she talked, I felt like somebody understands me for the first time.
Mhm.
So if you are an extrovert listening, seriously check that book out. And I very much value my introvert friends. They're so wise and they teach me so much. But I think as extroverts, we do pile a lot of things on sometimes. We want to be with people, we want to be out there doing sometimes. And it's very difficult to manage that in our daily lives. It's part of the zest for life that we have, not to say that introverts don't have that, they absolutely do too, but it is this feasting on every day. And I don't know, I guess no matter what you are, introvert, extrovert, what's the other one? Ambivert or what? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think we definitely there's people who just have that kind of feeling of I want to make the most of every single day. We have such a short life here upon this earth that every day I wake up and I think, this could be my last one. And what am I going to do this day? How do I want to live my life? And sorry, to side note here, this is another reason why I love going to cemeteries. Okay. I am the person that loves to go to cemeteries because I feel like it reminds us of our mortality and it helps us show respect for those who came before us. But it just reminds me that what do I want to leave behind? What legacy do I want to leave? And am I just going to be an RIP? Which, by the way, I
Mhm.
hate RIP on a tombstone. I think that's like, can't you at least spell it out? Like, do you have to abbreviate rest in peace?
Right.
But you know what I mean? Like, am I just an RIP on a tombstone, or am I trying to make the world better than when like leave the world better than when I found it? Like, how am I living my life the short time that I have on this earth? So it's hard. It's hard for me to find that balance because that's constantly on my mind.
Yeah. I think we all have to keep trying to find that every day. And that's the beauty is that you say you wake up every day and you can decide for that day. And that's a beautiful gift. Do you feel like there have been any specific transitions or challenges that have challenged your identity or made you really make a big shift, or that you've stayed pretty much the same in your identity as you've grown?
I do feel like from a really early age, I'm very thankful. I feel like I knew who I was. And that identity, of course, I feel like is very tied to the relationship that I've tried to build with my Heavenly Father.
Mhm.
And I feel like when I was in the hardest moments of my life as a child, I had to draw on that. I had to draw on that stability that I knew was there. And I received answers from a young age, and that changed my life. Like it absolutely has affected every ounce of my life. And so I feel like that identity came early for me. Not to say I haven't absolutely grown, and not to say that it hasn't changed and evolved and I've discovered more pieces of myself. Absolutely. But I feel like that identity of you're not alone, you are loved. You're a daughter of a king, and you have an important part to play on this earth, which everybody has. Um, And the idea of every single talent can be and talent, gift, knowledge, skill set, whatever, can be used for good or it could be used for bad. And all of those things were so clear to me as a kid. And I really think that's only through complete reliance. I had to really like there were times I would just cry on my knees as a kid. And this is not when my family was even going to church. It was like just this instinctive like help. It was like help me as a kid. And I feel like that is when I really learned who I am, which I think everybody is that person. I'm not anything special from it. It's just it became clear to me at an early age because I think God knew that I needed to know
Mhm.
that to get through those hard things, I needed to have some kind of foundation and it needed to be Him. And as I saw myself through His eyes, it gave me the strength to get through the hardest things of my life as a child.
It sounds like your relationship with God is something that has always kept you rooted and grounded, and that you've always been able to come back to that. Are there any other things that you feel like have kept you grounded and rooted, or things that you've learned as you've grown that have kept you grounded?
Yes, thanks. Creativity. I feel like creativity has saved me in so many ways, and I do feel like that is a, whether you believe it or not, that's okay. Like I I don't think that, there's any judgment there, of course, whatsoever. But I feel like when we're speaking of God, I feel like he's the ultimate creator, right? So I believe that creativity is a divine attribute and it's something that is given to us for joy. It's given to us to help us understand each other and have compassion and love, which I feel like are some of the things that we're missing so much right now in society. So I feel like for me, creativity helped me get through some of the darkest times. Also helped me discover my identity. It helped me to, during a difficult period of motherhood, very, very difficult period of motherhood that lasted several years where I could not see the light at the end of that tunnel. And for anybody listening, if that is you, you are not alone. And I'm just sending a big hug to you because we don't talk about this as mothers very much because we kind of expect ourselves to say, being a mom is the best thing I've ever done. And it's so great. And we don't really allow ourselves to say, this is incredibly hard. And I'm dying inside,
Mhm.
sometimes. And so I was going through a period that was I can only compare it to being one of the worst times of my life, and because of somebody who was struggling, one of my kids. And that was a time where after everything shut down at the end of the night and everybody got put to bed, I was sitting up in bed and I was writing. And that helped pull me through other than, God and prayer, but it helped pull me through. And as I wrote, I could put those feelings into other characters. I could put them into other situations. And it was the most healing therapeutic thing. And, it's like in my mind's eye, I can see myself in my room, my husband asleep, everybody asleep, this quiet little house. And I know all of us women can relate to this in one way or another, right? Where we're just like plugging along, doing that thing, whatever that thing is, whether it be eating chocolate in a pantry because it's our one moment alone, right? But doing that thing where we feel some joy and some healing because we're thirsty for it. So creativity helped bring me through that time. And that has been the times where I've created what I'm most proud of has been during the darkest times of my life.
Wow. That's powerful. Creativity is such a gift that we can use. And it's so interesting to think about that we can define that so many different ways. I could no more write a play than fly to the moon
Oh,
or a
yes, you
book or
could.
no, I have tried to write. I'm not a writer. I'm a reader. I love to consume other people's literature. And it's just something I've learned about myself. It's just not where one of my strong suits is. And could I develop that? Sure. But it's not something I want to develop. I'd rather read your work, you know? Um, but the different ways that we find to take creativity, I think all of us can relate to that in some way, shape, or form, that we all create, no matter what it is. Some people bake, some people sew, some people sing, some people do math,
They
and
organize. Yes,
yes, they create
yeah.
order. I
Mhm.
can't create order either. That's something that I'm just
Sure.
terrible
I
at,
love those
right?
people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I need more of those people in my life. Please
me
come into my
too.
life, create some order. But I wanna go back. I don't wanna discount the beauty of creativity. I think it's beautiful, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that, but I do wanna go back to this conversation about motherhood because I feel like it is something that no matter what stage of motherhood you're in, can be both the most amazing and the most terrible things that we experience. I think it's uniquely hard when we are people pleasers. And I think that your childhood experiences of needing to make other people happy, to fix the problems, to bring joy to a situation, then suddenly you're a mom. And once our kids reach a certain age, we can no longer fix all the problems. Kissing the boo boo doesn't make the boo boo go away anymore. And we can't fix their problems. And it is a uniquely crippling emotion to feel like we can't solve our children's problems anymore and we literally can't do anything about them. Do you ever feel like you lost yourself a little bit or you that you didn't because you had creativity to pull you through?
Mhm. And I love what you just said. That was powerful. So yeah, creativity pulled me through and just faith in general. But I have to emphasize that it wasn't like a quick fix. It wasn't a thing that
Mhm.
I ever saw the end in sight. And that happens. Sometimes we have these trials that are like these little sprints and you're like, I know I just need to get there. Like, I know we're going to get a job sometime. We're going to be okay, right? Something like that. Others are those things where we go, this might never actually get better. This might be forever. And how do you keep yourself walking? How do you keep yourself moving through that tunnel, right? And sometimes we carry these weights upon our backs that nobody can really see. And we just think, wow, how come everybody's finishing this so quickly? How is it so easy for everybody? They're just like running through, like, this is the best day of my life. And why am I so far behind? Why am I like crumbling with the weight on my back? And it's because we've all got different packs. We've all got different things going on and we all have different experiences.
Sounds like that you were able to retain that sense of who you were through that, through creativity. The creativity and your relationship with God, both in your childhood and in your grown up years, have helped you to retain who you are through the hard things.
Yes, yes. And I feel really passionate about that. I gave a presentation a couple, I guess it's been like 8 years now, at the Holly Springs Cultural Center called Being Creative When Life Gets Crazy. And it was all about, and I was in that time. I was in the time of like darkness when I gave this presentation. And it was all about how do you still do it when you're trying to fulfill all these other responsibilities of your life? Because we need it. We need to find that joy. And so it was about ways to incorporate creativity in our daily life, no matter what we're going through, no matter how busy we are, whatever, but ways to kind of just feed that so that we can keep ourselves in the mix. And I don't know, I sometimes envy the other moms who take all of like forget all the things that they do, all the things that they're interested in. I mean, this is a weird perspective, but sometimes I envy them because I'm like, wow, that's so nice that like all of your energy in your entire life is toward your kids and your husband. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I was a little bit more like that, which sounds bad. But there's always been just this piece of me that is always reserved for things that I love because I don't know why. I don't know why. It's probably my survival. And I've known that as a kid, it was part of my survival mode. And so I've always kept this corner
Hmm.
for creativity. And it's never, ever been closed up and shut down. It's always been active, but I've still had the rest of the corners, for my husband and my kids and my church calling or whatever it is that I'm doing, because I just need it. It's part of my identity. It's part of my existence. And I will like literally like wither up.
Yeah.
And I can't live like that.
I don't believe any of us truly can completely live. You said that there's these moms that all they are is their kids. I don't think that that's sustainable for anybody. That everybody needs to find, and maybe there's people who think right now, well, that's okay. That's enough for me. Maybe their outlet for creativity is something that they haven't acknowledged yet. Maybe they are a gardener and they find that peace and joy in creating life through a garden, and they think of it only as something that they're doing for their family, but it's actually something that's feeding their soul, and they haven't recognized it yet, and that's okay. We all have to find that thing, and I think it's important to recognize it and to pour energy into the things that bring us joy. And I do truly believe that our kids will be happier when we model happiness for them. I don't believe that anyone should completely lose themselves in motherhood. I think that's a really
Well said.
important thing.
Well said. And sometimes it's hard to find that balance when we're not losing ourselves. Sometimes, at times, I've had to go, whoa, what's this balance looking like? Am I doing too much? And now my family is not getting enough of me. And that has been my constant struggle. So that's why sometimes I look, and I'm sure I'm not even correct in saying, oh, those people, like, they funnel everything into their kids and their husband or whatever. And maybe that's not even accurate. But from my perspective, sometimes I think, gosh, I really want to be more like that, because sometimes I find myself getting out of balance because I want to do all the things.
Right.
And sometimes, like you said, to your point, and this has been a challenge for me. And this has been, I talked to my therapist about it, and I'm a big believer that everybody should have a therapist in this
Mhm.
world that we're in. So I have no shame at all about having a therapist. I think
No
we're
one
in a
should.
crazy world. So, but I talked to my therapist just about how,
It's
I
easy
guess,
to look at everyone else's story, and we just see their highlight reel. We see the
yeah.
positive parts, and we don't see what they're struggling with beneath the surface, and we don't
Mhm.
see what they're doing that we have no idea what's happening. But again, I think
Right.
it comes back to that two-way mirror. We can see the positive things in their life and never really know the negative things, but we also have to look at the positive things in our life. We have to make that conscious choice to say, I'm doing this well, and recognize those things in ourselves and be find joy in those things.
Right.
Why is it
No,
so
I love
easy for
that.
us to see the all the positive things about everyone else? Oh, I wish I was like them. But we're not like them. And we don't want to be like them because then we wouldn't be us.
Yes. Perfectly put. Yes.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I want to come back to something. You said you're a person who lives in graveyards, loves the graveyards, could just stand there and read all the gravestones.
Yeah.
Obviously, my next question is one that applies well to you, and it is, how do you feel like researching your personal family history influences your identity and who you are?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Right.
I I'm obsessed with it. I think that it is an easy addiction if anyone's looking for a happy, good addiction, is family history. I feel like it appeals to everybody in one way or another, even if they have hard family stories. Even if there is difficult history within their family, they can find people that they can relate with. I'm passionate about the fact that there are ties that bind us to our ancestors that we don't even know about. Things that similarities that we have with some of them. And it's like, wow, they are just like me. Or, we find pieces of ourselves in them. And, for example, my grandma, my dad's mom, remember, I didn't really know my dad that well for a while. She passed away a long, long time ago. And she turns out she was a playwright and she was a poet and she liked to be on the stage. And like, what? I had no idea. And you just kind of feel like, wow, that's a piece of me. I've had a couple of things happen to me that were so mind blowing, Alicia, that like I cannot deny our ancestors their involvement in our lives. I think they're very well aware of us. I think they are cheerleading us. They're encouraging us. I think of them as like our guardian angels. I think they very much care about what we're doing and want the best for us. And they want to be remembered.
Mhm.
They want to be remembered. And so I feel like it shows respect to them and pays honor and tribute to them when we do our family history research and when we remember them. And we're going to want to be remembered. So anyway, I do have a story that I have to tell you about that, but really quick, I want to tell you that I teach a local history class right now that's online to high schoolers, and my students are all over the country. And so we talked a lot about what it means to be on this earth and to have this time here and about their family history. And it's just like, don't you think like when you die, you're gonna want people to remember you? Or are they just gonna be like a number, two dates on a tombstone? This is your time on this earth. So remember that for your ancestors. They lived, they were real people, they had loves, they had passions, they had dreams, they had fears. Try to dig into who they were. And, the story of someone's life can teach us so much. I mean, that's exactly why you're doing this entire podcast, right?
Right?
I mean, the story of those who are part of our family can enrich our lives and change them forever. So a crazy thing happened to me with, and you might have heard this, I'm not sure, Alicia, but with family history is I've always been really interested in the Salem witch trials, right? Like I've always been fascinated. In high school, I actually was cast as the part of Sarah Good in The Crucible. And then the lead, one of the lead actresses, this is when I was like a freshman, so I was, it was hard to get the bigger parts. And one of the lead actresses, she just wasn't showing up to rehearsals and things like that. Long story short, the director gave me her part to play Elizabeth Proctor. So but keep in the back of your mind that I originally was cast as Sarah Good. So fast forward, I visited Salem a couple of times, fascinated with the place, totally interested in all of this history and how do these people suddenly have mass hysteria about witches? Like, what is this, right? I don't know. I just love history. And so crazy thing is, I guess like a year and a half ago, I saw a Christian casting audition notice. And I'm like, Christian casting about Salem witch trials. Okay, I can get behind this because then I know it's not going to turn like super dark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm interested in the history, but I don't want it to turn like crazy. So I thought, okay, I'll audition for it. What the heck? And I really didn't even see a part that I fit, but I just submitted anyway. And I usually never submit myself. Usually the agency that I'm with sends me auditions, right? I know the same is for you, right?
Hmm.
And so it was kind of a rarity that I submitted for myself. Anyway, long story short, I got the part. I ended up getting the part of Sarah Good, and it shoots in Salem, Massachusetts. It
Hmm.
shoots on the Rebecca Nurse farm, and she was also accused and killed for witchcraft. So, which of course she was innocent, everybody was. But this farm is from the 1600s, all right, in Salem, Massachusetts, and we filmed the whole thing there. So I'm like, this is amazing. Wow, how cool that I get to be here. Well, the day before I left, a friend of mine, she said, hey, I wonder if we're related. And like there's an app called Family Search. And on Family Search, you can actually put some basic information in there. And then you can turn on a feature where it says find relatives around me. So anybody in the same room as you can see if you're related or not. And it's just a fun thing, but they have to turn it on at the same time. So she said, hey, just for the heck of it, let's see if we're related. And I told her that I was going to be flying to Salem the next day. And she said, oh, I have an ancestor who was involved like in the Salem witch trials. And I was like, oh, cool. But, not thinking that anything of that. And she said, for the fun of it, let's just check and see if we're related. So we did the find your relatives. Sure enough, we have a shared ancestor, and that shared ancestor was in Salem, Massachusetts, okay, in the 1600s.
Wow.
So I'm like, that is insane. First of all, I mean, we were like, now, of course, all the details I'm a little bit rusty on, but it was like a direct connection, my something great grandparents. So I went to Salem and we shot that, we filmed everything. And on my days off or when I had any time, I just grabbed a backpack, took an Uber, went downtown, and then I just started doing family research. And I was blown away. So turns out the character I was playing, Sarah Good, so she is accused of witchcraft and she's on trial and she's a real person. She was hung. She was one of the first, I guess probably like a couple before her in 1692. And so anyway, turns out my ancestor, my direct ancestor, was one of the main accusers of
Whoa.
the Sarah Good, the role that I played. And I felt like it was almost like it came full circle, and I don't even know how to explain it. I felt led the whole time I was there. It was like, go check out this place, go do that. It was like this feeling inside, like you need to go find this information. And when I played the part, I felt almost like my ancestors, sounds crazy, but I felt like my ancestors were grateful because it allowed almost like a apology,
Mm.
like for because I'm feeling all these feelings, I'm bawling, right? Like I'm feeling a lot of these feelings of what this person might have really actually felt in this moment. And my ancestors were a big reason why they ended up dying. And they didn't mean to. It was just this hysteria. And I could go on and on about that. But like, it wasn't like to be cruel. It was because they genuinely were misled. And so it almost felt like a healing moment for my ancestors to somebody they had done something to. It was just one of the most amazing experiences I have ever had in my life. Family history. I mean, I'm telling you, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just the ability to almost establish her innocence through playing her role for anybody who would watch it in the future. That's pretty neat to have that opportunity. Um, I love family history and I love learning about who I am and where I came from. I think you're right that it is really vital that we learn about ourselves, whether it's positive or negative things, it can shape us for good.
Hmm.
And it just depends on how we look at it, right? I just want to end with a final question, and it is, what is your best advice for women seeking to know themselves better or to find themselves or their voice and really understand their own worth in the face of labels that society throws at us or the challenges that we inevitably face in life?
I think our worth is just inherent. We can't change that. We can't change it even if we do bad things. We can't change it even if we don't believe it. We can't change it even if we feel like we're not worthy of it. We have that worth no matter what. And I have talked about worth a lot in the past and compare it to this old house that is in Holly Springs, back to history. It was like falling apart, basically growing into like the forest with like ivy all over it. And I have a picture of it, this old house. And I held it up to the audience and I said, "What is this house worth?" And it was a piece of junk. And so they kind of were like, "Ew, let's get rid of that eyesore," right? But when they understood the story behind the house, which was that a woman lived there and she had 6 kids, the one was just a baby, and it was during the Civil War, and her husband went out to go look for his brother who was missing in the war. Just at the same time, he never came back, by the way. At the same time, Union troops came waiting for the South to surrender. They came to her house, and instead of burning the house down, because a lot of houses they burned down, they spared it. But she had compassion on these people. She had compassion on the soldiers. She brought them in. She helped nurse their wounds. She and her family moved upstairs, and then the bottom part of the house was used as a hospital. And she took care of all of these soldiers, and she was spared. She even like took care of the soldiers, after the Civil War and got them back on trains back home. Again, a widow, not even able to take care of her land. When I told the audience the story behind this house, I said, "Does this house still mean the same thing?" And they said, "No, no, no, like we got to save that house, right?" They said, "We need to save that house." And I said, "Yes, because when we understand the story behind something, then we value it and we appreciate it and we love it. And sometimes that's helping. Sometimes we need to understand the story of ourselves. So, feeling that lack of worth or feeling that, what is my identity? We need to understand what is my own personal story. And whether that be based on your relationship with God or being a child of God, or if you go through identity just to talk about who you are and what your values are, what your belief system is, and how you care about people or whatever that might be, understanding the story of ourselves will allow us to really shape our identity and to recognize our worth and our value, and we'll realize there's no pieces of junk. There's everybody has this story, and once we understand that and embrace it, we can really live the life that we're meant to live. And one last thing I'll just share is Runaway Bride. I love that movie. And I don't know if you remember the part where she is trying to find out who she is. And she's trying, the whole entire movie, she basically says that she likes the same kind of eggs as every guy that she's with because she doesn't know what kind of eggs she likes. And I think as women, we go through those periods of time because we're pleasing everybody, like you said, we're so focused on everybody else. And there are motherhood times, or just whether you're not your mother, that's okay. Like later in life, you might be like, "Wait, who am I again? Like, what's my identity again? I can't even remember. I'm so out of touch with myself." And I love the part in the movie where she decides she's going to get healthy and she sits down with all different kinds of eggs and tries them all and decides, "What do I like? Who am I?" And I think if anyone listening is in that spot right now where they're not really sure, they kind of feel a little lost, is to take that time to get to know yourself, but know that your worth is there no matter what. It's in your story.
And I think that brings us back to that two-way mirror. We need to be able to see other people's beautiful story to understand them better, but we also need to look at our own and see for truth who we are And I love everything you just said. I'm not going to continue to expound on it because you said it perfectly. There's nothing else left for me to say. But thank you, Angie, so much for being willing to be a part of this podcast. And I just want everybody to learn as much as they can about you. Where can people go to find out more about Angie Staley?
You're so sweet. You could probably follow me on Facebook or Instagram. So Angie Ottosen, Ottosen dash Staley, Staheli, and also on Instagram, Angie Ottosen Staley. So I don't have my own fancy website, but you can follow me.
Okay.
Thank you for this time, Alicia. You are brilliant and you're inspired, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Story of Her podcast. Real women sharing stories of trial, triumph, and everything in between, with your host, Alicia Bake. One thing that really helps podcasters reach a wider audience is when you follow the show or hit that like or share button or even leave a review. If you'd be willing to do any of those things for me, I would really appreciate it. I'd love to get this message to a broader audience of women. Thanks a lot.